The price of pride, the Federation's darkest hour. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council had been called at the darkest hour anyone could remember. High Chancellor Veximer stood at the center of the great assembly hall, his 6 arms trembling as he read the latest reports. The crystalline walls of Nexus Prime's Capitol building reflected the worried faces of delegates from 847 different worlds, each one representing a species that had once believed they were safe under the Federation's protection. The Kepler system has gone silent, Veximer announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. That brings our total losses to 23 star systems in the past 6 months. Over 400 billion souls simply ... gone. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The delegates shifted nervously in their seats, some whispering prayers in languages that predated spaceflight, others simply staring at the holographic displays, showing the advancing wall of nothingness. That had begun consuming the galaxy's outer rim. Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian Collective watched the proceedings with growing desperation. Her people were among the longest lived in the galaxy, and she remembered events that others had relegated to history books. She remembered the day, 75 years ago, when this very council had made what she believed was the greatest mistake in galactic history, the memory that haunts in the observation deck of her private quarters. Cathara stared out at the stars and remembered Admiral Marcus Chun. He had been Earth's representative to the Federation, a man with gray hair and tired eyes who had fought harder than anyone to keep his species in the galactic community. She remembered his final speech to the Council, how he had pleaded for understanding, for a chance to prove that humanity's chaotic nature was not a threat but a gift. "We are not asking for special treatment," Sean had said all those years ago. "We are asking for the right to be ourselves. Yes, we make decisions with our hearts as well as our minds. Yes, we act on instinct when logic says to wait. But that is not weakness. That is what makes us human." The Council had not listened. They had been afraid of humanity's unpredictability, their tendency to break rules and protocols, their emotional decision-making that often led to unexpected consequences. When human colonists had violated the Prime Directive to save a dying species from a plague, the Council had seen it as proof that humans could not be trusted to follow galactic law. The vote had been swift and merciless. 846 species voted to exile humanity from the galaxy. Only the Zephyrians had opposed it. The void plague advances now. As Cathara watched the emergency session continue, she understood that the galaxy was paying the price for its fear and prejudice. The void plague, as scientists had named it, was unlike anything they had ever faced. It did not destroy worlds in the traditional sense. Instead, it seemed to erase them from existence itself, leaving behind empty space where entire solar systems had once thrived. Dr. Quinto, the Federation's leading physicist, stepped forward to address the assembly. His insectoid features were even more pronounced than usual, a sign of extreme stress among his people. "We have tried everything," he reported. "Quantum torpedoes, reality anchors, temporal stabilizers. The void plague adapts to every weapon we deploy, every strategy we employ. It learns from our attacks and becomes stronger." General Thokran, the Federation's supreme military commander, added his grim assessment. "Our fleets are being systematically destroyed, not in battle, but by having their very existence questioned. The void plague does not fight us. It simply decides that we were never there to begin with." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Some delegates called for evacuation of the core worlds. Others demanded the deployment of planet-killing weapons against the advancing threat. A few suggested surrender, though no one knew how to surrender to something that erased the very concept of existence. Ancient secrets. That night, Cathara made her way to the Forbidden's archives, the deepest levels of the Federation's historical database. As one of the few council members old enough to remember the galaxy's ancient history, she had access to records that most beings had forgotten existed. She searched through files that predated the Federation itself, looking for anything that might explain the Void Plague's origins. What she found chilled her to the bone. The records spoke of the Silence Wars, a conflict that had taken place over 50,000 years ago. An entity known as the Collective Mind had emerged from the space between galaxies, feeding on order and predictability. It had consumed entire civilizations by understanding their patterns and simply willing them out of existence. The ancient alliance that had fought the Collective Mind had won only by embracing chaos, by making decisions that defied logic and reason. The record spoke of warriors of disorder who fought with weapons of pure creativity. They had saved the galaxy by being unpredictable, by thinking in ways that the Collective Mind could not understand or counter. But the most shocking discovery came in the final files. The Collective Mind had not been destroyed. It had only been banished to the void between galaxies, where it had waited for the right moment to return. And now, with the galaxy more orderly and predictable than ever before, it had found its opening. Impossible choice the next morning, Cathara requested a private audience with High Chancellor Veximer. She found him in his office, staring at tactical displays that showed the Void Plague's relentless advance. 3 more systems had gone silent during the night. "I know what we're facing," Cathara said without preamble. "And I know how to stop it." Veximer's eye stalk swiveled toward her. "Explain." Cathara activated her personal datapad and projected the ancient records into the air between them. "The Void Plague is not a natural phenomenon. It is the return of the Collective Mind, an entity that feeds on order and predictability. Our ancestors defeated it once, but only by embracing chaos and unpredictability. That's impossible," Veximer stammered. "The Federation's strength comes from our unity, our shared protocols, our logical approach to problems. You're suggesting we abandon everything that makes us civilized." "I'm suggesting we remember what makes us diverse," Cathara replied. "The Ancient Alliance won because different species brought different ways of thinking to the fight. They didn't try to standardize their approaches. They celebrated their differences." Veximer was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What are you really suggesting?" Cathara met his gaze steadily. "I'm suggesting we contact Earth." The Forbidden's option, the silence that followed, was deafening. For 75 years, the very mention of humanity had been forbidden in Federation Council chambers. The quarantine around the Sol system was considered inviolable, a monument to the Federation's commitment to order and stability. That's treason," Veximer said finally. "Is it treason to save the galaxy?" Cathara asked. "The humans were exiled for being unpredictable, for making decisions based on emotion and intuition rather than pure logic. Those are exactly the qualities the ancient records say we need to defeat the Collective Mind." Veximer turned back to his tactical displays. Another system had just gone silent. "Even if you're right, we don't know if the humans would help us. We cast them out, treated them as outcasts and threats. Why would they lift a finger to save you?" "Because," Cathara said softly, "that's what humans do. They help even when they shouldn't, especially when they shouldn't. It's what got them exiled in the first place." A secret mission asterisk. 3 days later, a small, unmarked ship slipped away from Nexus Prime under cover of darkness. Cathara piloted the vessel herself, using her diplomatic credentials to avoid detection by Federation patrols. The journey to the Sol system would take 2 weeks, assuming the Void Plague didn't reach her first dot as she flew through the empty spaces between stars. Cathara wondered what she would find when she reached Earth. The Federation had maintained surveillance satellites around the cone human quarantine zone, but they had been mysteriously malfunctioning for the past decade. No one knew what humanity had been doing during their 75 years of exile. Behind her, the galaxy continued to die. The void plague advanced with methodical precision, consuming star systems in a pattern that Federation analysts still couldn't predict. Every day brought new reports of worlds gone silent, of entire civilizations erased from existence, as if they had never been. Earth's response when Catharai's ship finally emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. She gasped at what she saw. A quarantine barrier was still there, but it had been transformed. Instead of the simple energy field the Federation had erected, it now resembled a work of art, with patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Her communications. A ray crackled to life almost immediately. Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. State your identity and purpose. The voice was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. Cathara had not heard human speech in 75 years, and she found herself trembling as she replied. This is Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian Collective. I need to speak with Admiral Marcus Chun. There was a long pause. Then, Admiral Chun died 15 years ago, Ambassador. But his son, Admiral David Chun, is available. Transmitting docking coordinates now. The new Earth, as Cathara's ship was guided to a docking bay on Luna Station, she marveled at the changes she saw. The moon's surface was covered with cities. That defied conventional architecture, their buildings flowing like water, while somehow remaining solid. Ships moved between the structures in patterns that seemed chaotic, but never resulted in collisions. Admiral David Chun met her at the airlock. He was younger than his father had been when she last saw him, but he had the same intelligent eyes, and the same air of quiet strength. Behind him stood Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Earth's lead scientist, and Commander Alex Rivera, who wore the uniform of Earth's Defense Forces. Ambassador Cathara, Chin said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. It's been a long time since we've had a Federation visitor. To what do we owe the honor? Cathara found herself struggling to find the words. How could she explain that the galaxy was dying? How could she ask for help from people her government had cast out? The galaxy is ending, she said simply, and we need your help. A human perspective Admiral Chun led her to a conference room with a view of Earth. The blue planet turned slowly in the darkness, looking exactly as it had 75 years ago. But Cathara could see the signs of change everywhere else. Space stations that moved like living things. Ships that seemed to be made of light. Technology that followed no rules she recognized. Tell us about this threat, Dr. Mitchell said, her voice kind but professional. Cathara projected the data she had gathered, showing the void plague's advance and the ancient records she had discovered. As she spoke, she watched the humans' faces, looking for signs of anger or resentment. Instead, she saw concern, calculation, and something else. Something that looked like hope. The collective mind, Commander Rivera said when she finished. It feeds on predictability and order. Our ancestors defeated it by being chaotic and unpredictable. Exactly, Cathara said. And humans are the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. You're our only hope. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Why should we help? The Federation made it clear that we weren't welcome in their galaxy. They called us dangerous, unstable, a threat to galactic peace. Cathara felt her heart sink. She had hoped, but she had also feared this response. Because, she said, billions of innocent people are dying. Because the void plague won't stop at Federation worlds. It will come for Earth eventually. We know, Dr. Mitchell said quietly. We've been tracking its progress for months. Our long-range sensors detected the reality distortions when it first appeared. Cathara looked up in surprise. You've been watching? We never stopped watching, Admiral Chun said. Just because the Federation cut us off doesn't mean we stopped caring about the galaxy. We've been monitoring the situation, developing countermeasures, preparing for the day when the threat reached us. The Revelation Commander Rivera activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy from a human perspective. Cathara gasped as she saw the detail, the precision of the monitoring systems Earth had developed. They knew more about the void, plague, than the Federation's own scientists. "We call it the entropy heater," Dr. Mashel explained. "It's not destroying matter and energy. It's consuming information, erasing the patterns that define existence. Every civilization it encounters becomes part of its database, making it stronger and more adaptable. But there's a weakness," Admiral Chun added. "It can only process information. That follows logical patterns. Chaos, true randomness, is like poison to it. That's why the Ancient Alliance was able to defeat it." Cathara felt hope rising in her chest. "Then you'll help us?" The three humans exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Chun nodded. "We'll help. But not because we forgive the Federation for what they did to us. We'll help because it's the right thing to do. Because that's what humans do." Preparation for war the next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Cathara was amazed by the technology Earth had developed during its isolation. Their ships used probability drives that could change the laws of physics in small areas. Their weapons fired bursts of pure entropy that could unravel the fabric of reality itself. Their defensive systems were based on quantum uncertainty, making them impossible to target or predict. But the most impressive development was the humans themselves. The generation that had grown up in exile was different from their predecessors. They thought in ways that even other humans found unpredictable. They had embraced chaos as a philosophy, turning their supposed weakness into their greatest strength. Captain Lisa Park, Earth's youngest fleet commander at 28, demonstrated one of their new starfighters. The ship moved like a living thing, responding to her emotions and instincts rather than specific commands. "The trick," she explained, "is not to think about what you're doing. The moment you try to be tactical, you become predictable." Dr. James Wright, Earth's leading quantum physicist, showed Cathara their research into creative physics. They had learned to bend the laws of nature by refusing to accept that laws were absolute. "Reality," he said, "is more flexible than most people think. You just have to be willing to ask it nicely to change." The final decision, as Cathara prepared to return to Federation space with Earth's response. Admiral Chun walked with her to the docking bay. The corridors of Luna Station were filled with humans preparing for war, their faces showing a mixture of determination and excitement that she found both inspiring and terrifying. "There's something you need to understand," Chun said as they walked. "We're not doing this to rejoin the Federation. We're not doing this to prove we belong in your galaxy. We're doing this because it needs to be done." "I understand," Cathara replied. "Do you?" Chun stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because when this is over, when the void plague is defeated and the galaxy is safe, we're going back to our exile. We've learned something important during these 75 years. We've learned that we don't need the Federation's approval to be who we are." Cathara felt a pang of sadness. "The Federation has changed. Many of us realize we were wrong to exile you." "Maybe," Chun said, "but we've changed too. We've learned that sometimes the best way to help is to remain apart. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to solve their own problems." As Cathara's ship prepared to depart, she looked back at the Sol system one more time. Earth's fleet was already mobilizing, ships that moved like schools of fish through the void. They were beautiful, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. For the first time in months, she felt hope. Asterisk. A chaotic symphony, the fleet that defied logic. Captain Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the EDS wildcard, watching the stars shift as Earth's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system. Around her, 200 human ships materialized. From the void, each one different from the others, each one moving in patterns that would have given Federation tactical computers nervous breakdowns. "Scanning for void plague signatures," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the sensor station. Her console displayed readings that fluctuated wildly, showing energy patterns that existed in states of controlled chaos. "Contact confirmed. The collective mind has partially consumed the system. 3 planets gone, 1 partially integrated." Lisa nodded, her hands dancing over controls that responded to her emotional state as much as her conscious commands. The wild card was more than a ship. It was an extension of her will, powered by probability engines that ran on pure human intuition. "Signal the fleet. Remember, no patterns, no predictable movements. Fight like you're dancing, not marching." The human fleet spread out across the system in a formation that would have horrified traditional military strategists. Some ships moved in spirals, others in straight lines. A few simply spun in place while advancing. From the outside, it looked like controlled madness. From the inside, it was a symphony of chaos that the collective mind couldn't comprehend. Federation's last stondome, a bridge of the FSS Harmony. General Thokran watched the human fleet's approach with a mixture of fascination and terror. His own forces, 500 ships representing the Federation's most advanced military technology, were arranged in perfect formation around the system's star. Every vessel knew its position, its role, its expected performance parameters. General reported. His tactical officer, "The human ships are not following any recognizable deployment pattern. Our computers can't predict their movements." Thokran's 4 eyes focused on the display showing the chaotic swirl of human vessels. "That's the point, Commander. They're not trying to be predictable. The Federation had been fighting the Void Plague for 8 months now, and every battle had ended the same way. Their fleets would engage the enemy with perfect coordination, following battle plans developed over centuries of warfare. The collective mind would analyze their tactics, adapt to their strategies, and then simply decide that the Federation ships had never existed. But the human fleet was different. As Thokran watched, he saw ships that moved like living things, that seemed to change their fundamental nature from moment to moment. One vessel appeared to be made of solid metal, then suddenly became translucent, then shifted into something that looked like crystallized music. "All Federation ships, this is Captain Park of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a voice over the communications channel. "We're about to engage the Void Plague. Whatever you do, don't try to support us in any organized way. The moment you become predictable, you become vulnerable." The collective mind awakens in the space where Proxima Centauri had once burned. Something vast and alien stirred. The collective mind was not a single entity, but a network of consciousness that spanned dimensions, feeding on the ordered patterns of existence. It had consumed thousands of civilizations, each one adding to its vast database of predictable behaviors. The arrival of the Federation fleet had been expected. Their formations were logical. Their weapons followed established patterns. Their tactics were variations on strategies it had encountered countless times before. The collective mind began the process of analyzing and categorizing the threat, preparing to simply erase the Federation vessels from existence. But then the human ships arrived, and everything changed. The probability engines that powered the human fleet operated on principles that the collective mind couldn't process. They ran on uncertainty, on the quantum foam of possibility that existed between moments. When it tried to analyze a human ship, the vessel would become something else, something that had never existed before. Dr. James Wright, monitoring the engagement from the bridge of the research vessel, E.D. Heisenberg watched his instruments with growing excitement. "It's working," he reported to Admiral Chun over the communication link. "The collective mind is trying to categorize our ships, but every time it thinks it understands one, we become something else." The dance of chaos, the battle, began not with massive explosions or coordinated volleys, but with something that looked more like performance art. The human ships moved through space in patterns that seemed to tell a story, each vessel following its own narrative thread, while somehow remaining part of a larger tale. Captain Park's ship, the wild card, led the charge by not charging at all. Instead, it began to spiral around the space where Proxima Centauri had been, its weapons firing bursts of crystallized emotion into the void. Where her shots struck, reality itself seemed to hiccup, creating pockets of pure possibility that the collective mind couldn't assimilate. The EDC paradox, commanded by Captain Maria Santos, took a different approach. Her ship began to exist in multiple states simultaneously, becoming a Stinger's vessel that was both attacking and retreating, both destroyed and victorious. The collective mind's attempts to process this contradiction created feedback loops that damaged its local processing nodes. Engineer Maya Patel, aboard the E.D.'s Prometheus, had developed the most radical approach of all. Her ship began to randomly generate new physical laws, creating pocket universes where the rules of reality were different. In one bubble, gravity flowed upward. In another, time moved backward. In a third, cause and effect were reversed. The collective mind recoiled from these pockets of chaos like a living thing avoiding poison. Its attempts to consume the altered reality only resulted in corrupted data spread through its network like a virus. The Federation learns General Thokron watched the human attack with growing understanding. His tactical training, honed over decades of military service, had taught him to think in terms of formations, objectives, and coordinated strategies. But the humans weren't following any of those rules. "They're not fighting a battle," he realized aloud. "They're composing a symphony." Each human ship was like an instrument in an orchestra, playing its own part while contributing to a greater whole. But unlike a traditional symphony, this composition had no conductor, no sheet music, no predetermined structure. It was pure improvisation, chaos, even form and purpose. "General," his communications officer called out, "Captain Park is requesting that we join their attack pattern. But she's not giving us specific orders. She's asking us to feel the rhythm and let the music guide us." Thokran felt every instinct of his military training rebelling against such unstructured cooperation. But he also saw that the human strategy was working. The collective mind, which had effortlessly destroyed dozens of Federation fleets, was struggling to process the chaotic attack. "All Federation ships," he ordered, "break formation. Follow your instincts. Don't think about what you're doing. Just do what feels right." It was the hardest order he had ever given, asking his crews to abandon everything they had been trained to do. But as the Federation ships began to move in random patterns, supporting the human assault with their own improvised tactics, Thokran saw something he had never seen before. Asterisk. The collective mind was retreating. The heart of darkness. As the battle raged, Dr. Wright made a crucial discovery. The quantum sensors aboard the Heisenberg had detected something at the core of the collective mind's presence, a focal point where its consciousness was most concentrated. "It's not just a network," he reported to Captain Park. "There's a central node, a core consciousness that's trying to maintain order within the chaos. If we can reach it, we might be able to disrupt the entire entity." The core was protected by layers of ordered space, regions where the collective mind had imposed its will so completely that even chaos couldn't penetrate. Traditional weapons would be useless against such defenses, but the humans had never been traditional. Captain Park made a decision that would have been impossible for any other species. She ordered her ship to stop existing as a ship and start existing as an idea. The wild card became a concept, a notion of possibility that slipped through the ordered defenses like water through a net. Behind her, the other human ships followed suit, each one becoming something abstract and indefinable. The Ed's paradox became a question without an answer. The Ed's Prometheus became a dream of what might be. The E.D. Seisenberg became the uncertainty principle given physical form. The core confrontation at the heart of the collective mind's presence, Captain Park found herself face to face with something that defied description. It was vast and ancient, a consciousness that had existed for millions of years, consuming civilizations and adding their patterns to its endless database. "You are chaos," the entity communicated, its voice like the sound of dying stars. "You are the antithesis of order, the enemy of all that is structured and predictable. You cannot exist in my reality." "That's where you're wrong," Park replied, her voice carrying the weight of 75 years of human exile, of a species that had learned to thrive in the spaces between order and chaos. "We don't exist in your reality. We exist in our own, and we're inviting you to join us." The confrontation that followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a conversation between two fundamentally different philosophies of existence. The collective mind tried to impose order, to categorize and control. The humans responded by embracing uncertainty, by becoming more chaotic and unpredictable with each attempt to constrain them. Dr. Wright, observing from the safety of the Heisenberg, watched as reality itself began to shift around the confrontation. The rigid structure of the collective mind's consciousness started to develop cracks, flaws in its perfect order that allowed chaos to seep in. "It's working," he reported. "The entity is trying to process our chaos, but chaos can't be processed. It's like trying to solve an equation where the variables keep changing." The moment of choice, as the battle reached its climax, something unexpected happened. The collective mind, faced with the impossible task of cataloging pure chaos, began to change. Instead of trying to impose order, it started to experiment with disorder. Instead of seeking to control, it began to explore. I don't understand," the entity communicated, its voice now filled with something that sounded like wonder. "You are showing me patterns that have no patterns, structures that have no structure. How is this possible?" Captain Park, still existing, as more of an idea than a person, smiled. "It's called creativity. It's called freedom. It's called the right to be unpredictable." The collective mind's response was not what anyone had expected. Instead of fighting harder to maintain its order, it began to embrace the chaos the humans had introduced. Its rigid network started to develop nodes of pure possibility, areas where new ideas could form and grow. "I have been consuming civilizations for eons," the entity said, "adding their patterns to my database, making everything more ordered, more predictable. But I have been missing something. I have been missing the joy of not knowing what comes next." The new alliance, the transformation was gradual but profound. The collective mind, which had been an entity of pure order and control, began to incorporate elements of chaos and creativity into its consciousness. The systems it had consumed weren't destroyed or forgotten. They were reborn as something new, something that combined order and chaos in ways that had never been possible before. The void plague began to retreat, not because it had been defeated, but because it had chosen to evolve. The empty spaces where star systems had been consumed began to fill with new forms of existence, realities that followed rules that were constantly being rewritten. General Thokrin, watching from the bridge of the Harmony, found himself witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. "It's not just stopping the plague," he reported to Federation Command. "It's transforming it into something else entirely." The human fleet, having completed their impossible mission, began to reform into something resembling a traditional formation. But even their organization was chaotic, ships moving in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical principles that existed only in the moment they were being executed. The price of victory, as the immediate crisis passed, Captain Park found herself back on the bridge of the wild card, which had returned to existing as a ship rather than as a concept. Around her, the crew was celebrating, but she felt a strange mixture of triumph and melancholy. "We did it," Lieutenant Commander Kim reported. "The collective mind has withdrawn its attacks. The consumed systems are being restored, though they're different now. More ... flexible." Park nodded, but her attention was focused on a communication from Admiral Chun back in the Sol system. The message was brief but clear. Mission accomplished. Return to Earth. The galaxy is safe. But as the human fleet prepared to leave, they were joined by an unexpected escort. Ships from across the galaxy had arrived, representing dozens of species that had once been part of the Federation. They moved in formation around the human vessels, not to threaten or control, but to honor. "This is Admiral Kithara of the Zephyrian Collective," came a voice over the communication channel. "On behalf of the Galactic Federation, we offer our formal thanks for your service to the galaxy. We also offer our apologies for the way we treated your species. We were wrong, and we hope you can forgive us." Captain Park looked at her crew, seeing in their faces the same mixture of emotions she felt. They had saved the galaxy, but at a cost. The human fleet had changed during the battle, becoming something more than ships and crews. They had become living embodiments of chaos and creativity, forever altered by their confrontation with the collective mind. The new reality, Dr. Wright, analyzing the aftermath of the battle, made a discovery that would change everything. The confrontation with the collective mind had not just transformed the ancient entity. It had changed the fundamental nature of reality itself. "The universe is different now," he reported to the assembled fleet commanders. "The rigid laws of physics have become more flexible. The asterisk